Hi, and welcome to my thoughts on Refusing Compulsory Sexuality, a Black Asexual Lens on our sex-obsessed culture by Sherronda J. Brown. I wanted to start this off by saying two things. One, I received this book for free in return for an honest review. And two, I am reading this as a white asexual individual. Given that this book is looking at how people in society are treated and how they see the world, I feel like sharing my starting point in this is important when considering what weight you put on my opinions. The synopsis reads, everything you know about sex and asexuality is probably wrong. The notion that everyone wants sex and that we all have to have it is false. Is intertwined with our ideas about capitalism, race, gender, and queerness, and it impacts the most marginalized among us. For asexual folks, it means that ace and aspec identity is often defined by a queerness that's not queer enough through a lens of perceived lack of pleasure, connection, joy, maturity, and even humanity. In this exploration of what it means to be black and asexual in America today, Sherronda J. Brown offers new perspectives on asexuality. She takes an incisive look at how anti-blackness, white supremacy, patriarchy, heteronormativity, and capitalism enact harm against asexual people, contextualizing asephobia within a racial framework in the first book of its kind. Brown advocates for the A in LGBTQIA+, affirming that to be asexual is to be queer, despite the gatekeeping and the denial that often says otherwise. With chapters on desire, fuckability, utility, refusal, and possibilities, Refusing Compulsory Sexuality describes topics of deep relevance to ace and aspec communities. It centers the black asexual experience and demands visibility in a world that pathologizes and denies asexuality, degenerates queerness, and specifically sexualizes black people. A necessary and unapologetic reclamation, Refusing Compulsory Sexuality is smart, timely, and an essential read for asexuals, aromantic, queer readers, and anyone looking to better understand sexual politics in America. I want to start with my overall thoughts before diving into the meat of my points. Personally, I enjoyed this book and found it both validated and instructive. Many aspects of how society treats asexuals that are discussed in this book are relevant to me and line up with my own experiences. Having these written in print and talked about as things that are common to others who share my identity, whilst on one hand is hard to hear because it means we're all treated poorly, on the other it's welcome to see that I'm not alone in this. There is then a layer of learning I felt whilst reading this book, as Brown discusses things that are more commonly experienced by black people, regardless of their sexualities, and then the compounding of the two. I have not experienced these, and arguably cannot experience these. And it showed me how much further we have to go in society in a way that I don't think I would have been able to find out about otherwise. I imagine that if another allosexual person of colour was to read this book, they would find the same thing in reverse, being very familiar with things that are felt and experienced by all black people, but then learning about things that also learning things and the compounding of the things that are more common within the asexual community that they might not understand the full effect of on black asexual individuals. I do think that this book will be harder to read the less of your identity you have in common with being a black asexual person, as there would be less to relate to and more things that you're potentially learning about for the first time. I think that potential readers should be aware of that before deciding when and if they want to read this book. I highly recommend that everyone does read it, but for some people this is going to be more work, highlights more work than they need to do than for others, and I think making sure you're in a position where you're able to properly understand what this book is trying to say is an important thing to do before picking it up, as opposed to reading it to say that you've read it to get some kind of personal growth brownie points. I did also appreciate whilst reading this book that people who are referred to who are still living, or who we can accurately get this information from them, have their pronouns on next to their names so they can be referred to correctly by people who wish to talk about them later. I think that this is a really nice small gesture of inclusion and tolerance that is not often seen in books, although it is most common in books discussing identity. I also quite like the fact that there are content warnings throughout this book and relevant chapters and subtitles within the book, so that if you need to skip passages you can, but it's done in such a way that you only have to skip the smallest amount of the book possible to avoid content you don't wish to see. And this book covers a variety of different topics in depth and isn't unafraid to hold a critical lens not only to the wider society, but also things with the queer and black communities and how they treat black asexual people, and how the intersection of these identities just make it harder for people to find safe spaces. I did, however, find that the chapter titles are often a bit colder and blunter than the way things are phrased in the main body of the text, and I did think that it could be a bit off-putting. For example, the unfit and unhuman chapter titles, whilst there is far more nuance, in the actual text, it did kind of make me tense up and brace a bit when I saw them, and having these labels printed at the top of every page wasn't particularly nice. I feel like this could be subverted so they're positive affirmations as opposed to like a negative put down, just because this book is already dealing with heavy themes and often talking about how people see you as lesser, that having more positive things kind of makes it easier to read if it's you that's being gone after. But given that is my biggest criticism of the book, it is fair to say that it is a wonderful read. Overall, I really enjoyed reading this book, and I'm going to pick up a physical copy in future, and I would recommend that everybody reads it. As I said, given that my biggest problem is what the chapters are called, it's a great book. It demands some introspection and changes in yourself, and I feel like there are some things that you won't properly understand until those changes are made, and everyone's coming from different starting points, so maybe for some people this book is just stating the obvious, while for others it's completely revolutionary, but I do think it is worth everyone reading it. Thanks for listening. Please like and subscribe so you don't miss another date from me. Have a nice day.